Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Great Shot, Kid, the podcast on the Nerd Party Network that looks at creators of science fiction, Star Wars, Star Trek, what have you, and examines their influences on our lives, your lives, everybody's lives. I'm John.
And I'm Mike.
And we are going to be delving into a special topic today. But before we do that, of course, thenerdparty.com/contact. You can go ahead and drop a line to the show by finding Great Shot Kid there. You can find the show over on the social networks, facebook.com/thenerdparty. Use the hashtag GreatShotKid. Find the network's Twitter handle at JoinNerdParty and the Nerd Party on Instagram. Again, using the hashtag GreatShotKid. So, all of that out of the way, what we were thinking about discussing today is what we were watching when we weren't watching Star Wars. So, of course, Star Wars, big influence on both of us and our viewing habits and tastes and everything, but there's a little bit of an age difference between us. It's not huge, but there's a little bit of an age difference. So I think there's sort of an interesting conversation to be had here, in all honesty, because the landscape of what you would have been watching when you weren't watching Star Wars growing up, I think is more expansive than the one I would have had. I mean, I think I had slightly more limited options. I was around before the big cable boom, as it were.
Yeah, I don't know, because, well, I mean, I guess it depends. I mean, I was really young. My family did not have cable until I was like 10 or 11, you know?
We held out till my senior year of high school.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right. But, I mean, I think, like, the weird thing with me is, like, I didn't watch movies. I really didn't, you know? I was, yeah. I mean, my family, they don't watch movies. It's very strange.
That is strange. So what happened? How did you wind up becoming the movie watcher then?
Well, it was through Star Wars. Star Wars was the gateway. You know, I mean, I started watching Star Wars when I was 2 with my friend Benny, who was, you know, his family they're huge movie fans, you know? Mm-hmm. So, like, I would hear about these movies from Benny, you know, whose parents would let him watch R-rated movies when mine wouldn't, you know? I mean, like, my parents wouldn't even let me watch G.I. Joe, you know, because it was, you know, about war.
What?
Know? So, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Nobody ever died on G.I. Joe.
It didn't matter. And, you know, you look at, like, Transformers, you know, that's just, or Star Wars, but I guess maybe it's just a little more abstract or something. I don't know.
No, but I mean, like, G.I. Joe, they were firing lasers. Like, seriously, like, it wasn't like gunshots and there weren't spent shells, and, like, they might as well have been playing paintball with Cobra. Like, nobody got tagged.
My parents were, you know, kind of, well, my mom especially kind of hippie-ish, I guess, in a lot of ways. You know, I mean, she was you know, someone I mean, my mom was not a big fan of, like, any sort of, like, conflict or confrontation, you know?
Yet she knows that Star Wars has a lot of war-type conflict in it.
I mean, it has war in the title.
Yes.
Right? But I guess I don't know. You know, it's weird. It's weird. I don't know. But, yeah, you know, so what was I watching? Well, I mean, I was watching Transformers. That was huge for me. I mean, when Benny and I weren't playing Star Wars, we were playing Transformers. I mean, but you got to keep in mind that Transformers started when I was like 4 years old, right? But
would it have still? It was still the original run, right?
Yeah, I vividly remember when the movie came out, which I didn't see in theaters.
Well, I saw it for one of my birthdays.
I was very disappointed that I didn't see that in theaters, but we got it, you know, on video. I remember taking it home, which is interesting because you look at that. I mean, Transformers the movie is very much a Star Wars ripoff, right? Like the plot is basically Star Wars, but it's great. It's great.
You have the call. Yeah, you have the call to action. You have the hero and the magic talisman and the big evil who's commanding the tiny evil and stuff like that.
What was the thing that the guy was talking about? Like, was it Lucasploitation? Is that what he was saying?
I don't know this.
There's a guy. He writes for he's actually in Chicago. Like I've seen him at like screenings and stuff. And I forget his name, but he wrote like this whole article about like Lucasploitation, which is basically like the movies which were like low budget ripoffs of Star Wars, how that became like a whole genre in like the mid 80s.
Oh yeah. No, there was. Have you ever seen Battle Beyond the Stars?
No.
That's Roger Corman, I think.
Yeah.
It's got George Papard in it. It was so obviously that they sold people on the idea of being in the film because they were like, it's like Star Wars. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Okay, I'll be in it. Flash Gordon,
Galactica. I mean, that's what that was.
Well, Battlestar Galactica got sued, didn't they?
I think they did actually.
Yeah, because I think Dykstra worked on it, and they were accused of like stealing ship designs or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So.
It's crazy.
Yeah, well, gosh, yeah, I definitely watched the original Battlestar Galactica, which is I think it's very difficult to wrap my head around the fact that it was only one season long. Because
then there was Galactica 1980.
No, what? I don't know what you're talking about. Galactica 1980
come on, it's not
existed.
Like it somehow ruined the great Battlestar Galactica. That show, pure garbage.
It was not pure garbage. I will admit that going back and rewatching it as an adult, I said there may be some issues with this that aren't, it's not as good as my childhood remembers, but I wouldn't call it pure garbage by any. See, I think you're poisoned. We've gone on about this. You're poisoned against the original Battlestar Galactica because you love the new one so much. But the original one has some real charm to it.
It's dumb. It's so dumb. I mean,
what's dumb about it?
Ways. What's dumb about it?
Yeah, what is specifically dumb about it?
There's the thing that Ron Moore talks about all the time where it's like, society is obliterated. And then in episode 1, they go to the casino planet. What? There's some real weird tonal things.
You mean detouring to a casino planet didn't seem to make sense or further the narrative? Okay. All right. I can see how that could work. No, there's definitely a Star Wars. Wait a minute.
No.
Battlestar Galactica influenced Star Wars then.
No.
Okay.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is while it may have advanced the plot, while it may have furthered the narrative, it was so tonally inconsistent because like the last few thousand human beings in the galaxy would not be having a fun time at a casino mere hours after, the rest of their race was wiped out.
The 70s were a different time, Mike. In the 70s, you had Studio 54, you had a whole lot of things going on. It was a freer time, and they valued rest and relaxation. And I think that's what episode of Battlestar Galactica was speaking to.
Okay.
The need to relax even when the world is ending.
Okay. Yeah.
Listen, I said, going back as an adult, it's not as good as I thought it was when I was, however old I was when it was on, 5 or something like that. So I don't know. I mean, for me, it's weird because I don't really have a lot of memories of Star Wars ripoffs that I watched. Specifically because I think my dad was a really good filter for that. My dad was a cinephile of sorts. And I think if my dad sniffed out, this is a cheap ripoff of Star Wars, my dad was the one that was like, no, we're not going to go. No, you're not going to go. We're not seeing that. And we wound up going to a lot of movies. I mean, Raiders of the Lost Ark was, the Indiana Jones movies were there. But there were also, some really obscure ones. I can never remember the title of it. It was something Crossing, maybe Night Crossing or something like that, about a family that was escaping from East Germany. It was based on a true story, and they were in a hot air balloon, and they used a hot air balloon to get out of East Germany. And I remember that one. We went to an Iron Eagle. I remember seeing Iron Eagle. Like, it was weird because it seemed to be that the choices were Star Wars or, Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi. And then especially after those were over with, everything turned a lot darker and a lot more like military. Like the end of Star Wars was like the rise of Schwarzenegger, if you think about it, right? Because Return of the Jedi comes out in 83, and then 84 you get Terminator, and I see that because my brother works at a video store. So I was like, yeah, fine, you can watch Terminator. So my parents didn't let me see R-rated movies. My brother did. And so, that was, I don't know, man. Like it was like everything that's not Star Wars from what I was watching when I was growing up. I watched Transformers too. I was a huge Transformers fan. I watched G.I. Joe. But like everything else was like killer robots in the army,
Yeah, see, I didn't watch any of that stuff. Like, I'll never forget because it traumatized me. When I was 7 years old, I was over at Benny's house and RoboCop had just come out.
Oh, no. You were 7 when you saw RoboCop?
VHS. Well, no, and like they...
Oh, no.
Or I guess I was 8. I had just turned 8 and because I remember the Winter Olympics were going on. And I was trying to, they were like, let's watch RoboCop. Let's do this. And I'm like, how about can we watch the Olympics instead? Come on, this would be much better. And they're like, no, RoboCop. And they're like, I don't know, is it okay for Mike? He's only 8. And, Benny's mom called up her brother who had seen the movie and said like, hey, is it okay? And he's like, it's fine. There's like one scene where they're in like a locker room and you see some, nudity, but he can handle it. And I'm like, okay.
He forgot the brutal murder.
And then like we're all sitting there watching it. And like you have to understand that Benny's mom and my mom knew each other because they were both cantors at the Catholic Church. That's how they were friends, and
yeah.
Benny and I went to Catholic school together, So we're watching this and then the boardroom scene happens, right?
Oh, that's a good time.
And, as the guy is riddled with bullets and there's, thousands of squibs going off, I'm just like, because I had never seen anything like that before.
Yeah.
And Benny's mom says, Mike, tell your mom you watched Looney Tunes. And and the thing that like terrified me about that was not even so much like the extreme violence. It was everyone afterwards saying like, oh my God, back to the drawing board, and the complete disregard for the fact that someone had just been brutally murdered in this boardroom. Yeah. That's what terrified me. I had nightmares. And I think that's why to this day I pretty much, don't like RoboCop. RoboCop
that's
2,
interesting.
I'm okay with.
No, you're not. Nobody is fine with RoboCop 2. That movie is that if you're going to call the original Battlestar Galactica pure garbage, RoboCop 2 is a flaming pile of garbage. RoboCop 2 is such a hot mess of garbage that it burns a hole in the pavement that you fall in and break your legs. That movie is awful. It's awful on every single level.
I like RoboCop 2. It's fine, Irvin Kershner. But there were a few movies which I did see, almost random, and it almost seems like any movie that I watched I liked a lot. Like I don't know why I didn't watch more movies because the ones that I liked I watched again and again and again. But I mean the big one was Back to the Future. For sure.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I wanted to be Marty McFly. I had a vest and, everything like that. And I just thought he was the coolest guy in the world. And that was the coolest movie in the world. And I watched that again and again and again. But, again, like, my parents being weird and, me not really... I don't know why. I thought, like, going to a movie is, like, a big thing. And maybe it was for my parents. I mean... my mom worked for the church and my dad worked for the government, so maybe I know they didn't have a lot of money, but like, I don't know. Like, I go to see like a few movies a day now, and back then maybe that really was like an event, but
well,
like, Back
how
to
many
the
average
Future
screens?
Back to the Future 2 comes out and it's like, no, I didn't see Back to the Future 2 in the theater. Like, the thought had never really crossed my mind. Yeah, and that was only 4 years after the first one.
But movie theaters, we've lived through the rise of the multiplex. I remember specifically, like, the movie theater I saw Empire Strikes Back in had maybe, if my memory serves, six screens in it. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't stadium seating. The auditorium sat maybe 200 people in each theater. and the screens weren't overly large. And the screens still aren't overly large in most theaters now, but like there was no stadium seating, there wasn't recliners, there wasn't anything like that. But movies still, like, it was hard to get to the movie. It was harder to get to a movie or to see a movie when we were growing up. And now, you know, I mean, why belabor the whole thing about like streaming and DVDs and, you know, shipping services and instant video and all of those things. But like now you have a multiplex that has, you know, 15 screens on it. Like that, you know, that's like mind blowing to, you know, 6-year-old John's like 15 movies playing at once. Where is this magical paradise of which you speak? You know, like it was a trek. Like we had to go 45 minutes to get to a movie theater for most of my life growing up. And then when a movie theater, it was the only 9 cinemas. Okay. There were 9 screens on it. This was a huge deal. And as I think back to it, the auditorium, I think the biggest auditorium there sat like 350 people. Mm-hmm. And that was a big deal because it was only 15 minutes away from my house. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, I think that's why movies were a bigger deal. Is there was more effort involved in going and seeing a film, you know, back then. So
perhaps I don't know. I mean, there were a number of theaters close to my house. There was the Lake Theater, you know, which was an old movie palace, but that had been split up a little bit into like 3 screens. And then there was the Forest Park Theater, which showed 70 millimeter. It's now a rent-a-car place. And then there was the Harlem and Cermak Theater, which I believe was second run, which is now a Best Buy. But, you know, there were a number of theaters within a short distance of my house, and I never ended up at any of them. So,
well, you know, the thing is, while you're sitting here recounting and you're seeing RoboCop, I think it's funny because, you know, and I talked about like the rise of Schwarzenegger and everything, but like Return of the Jedi comes out the year that I turn 9. Okay, 8 going on to 9. And within a year and a half after that, I'd become hooked on horror films, slasher films to be precise. And they dominated my teenage years. And I think that there's probably some sort of psychological study. I'd be interested to see if I'm unique in this or if anybody else went down this road of like you go from this pure, happy, child-indulgent, you know, fantasy stories and morality tales of Star Wars, and then I graduate like almost immediately into movies about psychopaths going around. You know, one of them goes into people's dreams and kills them in their dreams, and one of them has a William Shatner mask that's been spray painted white and he kills them all. And you know, like what kind of gear shift happened in my brain where it was like, yep, well, okay, the hopeful stuff's done. Let's go watch some killing. You know, like I will never understand that about myself. What happened, man?
Well, I think the gear shift is probably puberty. That's my guess, but
I guess I was an early start.
I mean,
okay.
The same thing. I think that is typical. The same thing happened to me. I mean, you know, I got back into Star Wars after like losing all interest in movies and becoming just like a sports fan, just hardcore sports fan, you know. And then somehow I like Empire Strikes Back was playing on TV, and I watched it and was like, this is really good, and started rewatching those and really got hardcore into Star Wars, and that led to Star Trek and all that stuff. But like, and comic books and everything, and then yeah, when I'm 15 years old, my older friend who was a film buff was like, check out this movie. Which you'd probably enjoy, because there's a whole conversation in it about Star Wars. It's called Clerks.
Yeah.
So I watched Clerks, and I mean, there were like literally words in there which I had never heard before. I can't say any of them on this particular podcast, but if you listen to me speak pretty much anywhere else, you'll hear me say them. And it was something that I had never seen before, and it really did open up my eyes to this other world, which included things like Tarantino movies and Pulp Fiction and, indie cinema and R-rated comedies and all that stuff. So I didn't really get into the horror stuff too much, but I did get into like the really, really like raunchy, like almost like sex comedy stuff, So there was that shift for me too, into the adult fare.
It's interesting though, because what never transferred for me, and I guess maybe this descends from the being able to sniff out the cheap imitation sort of stuff. But I remember so many things that were blockbusters growing up. Top Gun being one of them. Like movies like that where you would almost think that there would be this, commutative property where, you were a Star Wars fan and you like ships flying around and straightforward stories and love stories and stuff like that. Here's Top Gun. And even though I was, I should have been part of the target demographic for Top Gun, I remember seeing it when it came out on video and saying to everybody, I don't like this. And of course, my brother and cousins who are like 5 and 6 years older than me, I'm an idiot. I don't know I still don't like Top Gun. I've never been able to figure out why, I can figure it out. I know exactly why Star Wars is something special compared to these things. And I think that's sort of the soulless quality of Top Gun is what I always picked up on, is it's just so bland. It's so, I don't know. It's just like a jigsaw puzzle that you put it together and it's like, oh, it's a picture of a parking lot. Okay. Like that sort of thing.
I don't know. I mean, I hadn't seen Top Gun until it was released in 3D, IMAX 3D a few years back, and I saw it then. And then I saw it the second time just about a year ago. They did a 70 millimeter screening as part of a 70 millimeter festival, and that was a pretty great screening because the audience was like really into it. And I enjoy it. I think it's fun. I think it's funny. I don't think it's great. It's not like, I'm like, oh, where has this been my whole life or anything like that. But I see the charm, because it's like very ham and cheese, and I appreciate that. But I think it's a lesser blockbuster and a lesser Tony Scott movie for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. What's interesting though is something I didn't double back to for a very long time, but in the wilderness years after Star Wars, when I was still going, I was always being taken to movies on my birthday. The Living Daylights was one of those movies that popped in there, and I became an instant James Bond fan just based on that movie, and I never saw any other James Bond movie until License to Kill, and I promptly stopped being a James Bond fan after that one. So it was very sure. But now that I've gone back and revisited the series, it's so interesting because Living Daylights will always be that anchor point for that whole series, and that happened during this time period. Star Wars is gone, Transformers has come and gone, and Living Daylights, I think, speaks a little bit to that whole youthful rambunctiousness, that energetic sort of filmmaking that's there.
Yeah, I mean, for me, James Bond, well, the first one I ever saw was Goldfinger, which was at my friend Matt's house, where his older brother and their friends were like, dude, we got Goldfinger, let's, put this on and make fun of it, and Goldfinger is a movie which you can totally, especially you get a bunch of high schoolers together, today, or even 20 years ago, that's what's going to happen because it's extremely silly, And yeah. I think what we didn't realize watching it then was it's supposed to be funny. It's not that this is just extraordinarily bad. They're trying to be funny, and it's succeeding because we're all laughing. But we think that we're above the movie when in reality we're not. But because of that, I was just like, this is dumb, But then when GoldenEye came out, that was the first one that I saw in the theater, and I really did. I think I loved the idea of it more than I loved the actual movie. And you know, my uncle had all of the James Bond movies, and I watched them all, almost one right after the other, and became a really big Bond fan at that point. For sure.
Well, here's a question for you, because the thing is, I actually have an answer in mind. But what's the first movie you saw after you had seen Star Wars? There was no prequels. There was no talk of prequels. It was just Star Wars was over with. What's the first movie you can remember seeing where it just grabbed you, where it filled that hole Like Star Wars left a sort of like a gaping hole in the entertainment landscape when it was gone for a while. What's the first one that ambled into that spot and said the sun has risen again?
I mean, I'm not sure that I was that conscious of it when I was that young, but it would be Back to the Future. Now,
okay,
I think if I were to take that into a slightly more elevated, place, I think once I got older and I started realizing what it was that Star Wars was and how special it was, and I started watching a ton of movies like for real, the first movie which I saw, which I felt like this must have been what it was like when Star Wars came out, right? The first movie that I saw that I thought really captured that essence, at least my idea of what it was like, upon first viewing in the theater, was Independence Day.
Interesting. Okay. I think this is where age, the slight age difference that we have, plays into the discussion, because for me, it winds up 1989's Batman by Tim Burton.
I can totally see that.
Because that, you sit down in the theater and you're like, okay, might be a little cheesy, like the Superman 4 sucked, ha ha ha, maybe it'll be like Superman 4, and then you watch it and you come out and you're like, what just happened?
Mm-hmm.
I have to go see that again, because what just happened? That's the first movie, I think, that I saw. I saw it 5 times in the theater that summer. And that's the first movie where I think I broke the 2-time barrier in terms of seeing a movie. My gosh, I honestly think that's the first movie I saw more than once in the movie theater.
Yeah,
was that Batman film.
I mean, I can totally see that with Batman. Independence Day, while I say like that, and I was all about Independence Day that whole summer and everything like that. Like, I think I was quickly sort of like, I quickly schooled myself, I think, a year later when Titanic came out. And that was when I was just like completely blown away and was like, this is just next level. I'll never forget like seeing the movie, going home, flipping through my Laserdisc collection to find something else to watch that night, and looking at all the movies in there, including all the Star Wars movies, and just thinking like, there's nothing in here which can come there's nothing that I can watch which would come close to the experience that I just had. I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to lay in bed and relive the magic.
So here's a question though, because we like to talk about how Star Wars left an impact on the landscape and everything, and I agree with you. Titanic's a great film. Do you think Titanic had a similar, do you think Titanic's impact, did it change filmmaking and what audiences wanted? Or was it something where people loved it and respected it and understood it in its own context, but it never really bred, a whole subgenre like the cheap Star Wars knockoffs that existed? I don't recall it having that sort of effect, which doesn't take anything away from it. I'm not saying it makes it a lesser film because of it. I'm saying do you think that the landscape had just changed, or am I wrong? Did I miss something?
Well, they tried briefly, I think. I mean, the clearest example, I think, would be Pearl Harbor. Really tried to tap into that and failed. I think they didn't, and this is something which, I don't know, I realized it blew me away, but like, when you think of blockbuster, you think of big action movies, you think of demographics that sort of lend itself to teenage boys, whether or not that makes any sense, whether or not that's true, like that's the sort of stereotype, when you think of the people going to the midnight movies or whatever, you think of teenage boys and, comic book movies, I have, very much sort of fit that stereotype and all that stuff, in a lot of people's minds. And I think what Titanic did, which everyone, I don't know, maybe everyone didn't miss, I don't know, but it was really aimed at teenage girls, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those were the people who really responded to it. And whether it's because the types of movies that teenage girls are interested in are, generally speaking, just less expensive to make and, aren't like blockbusters in that sense. I mean, you could say that The Notebook is kind of in that vein, right? In terms of its popularity, in terms of what it is that people really did respond to with Titanic, and I think that that's like a demographic which has been really, really overlooked, for a long time. And the thing that blew me away, that absolutely blew me away when this happened, that I could see firsthand was I was working at a movie theater in 2008 when we had in back-to-back weeks, and I forget which one was first and which one was, last, but we had Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and Sex and the City 2, I believe. Came out back-to-back weeks. And we had midnight shows for both because, of course, and, there was a decent crowd for Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Sex and the City 2 sold out every screen, And I'm like, what's going on here? And like my reaction was like, how dare they, like a Sex and the City movie more than a Indiana Jones movie, But I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's like those were the people who were coming out to see, midnight shows, that demographic, more than the stereotypical one. And I don't know. I think that like that's why it's kind of hard to compare, like Titanic to Star Wars, because like the types of movies that are like Titanic, I think are like Titanic on a very different level. You can make a movie that's like Titanic for $30 million. You can't really make a movie that's like Star Wars for under $100 million,
Not anymore. I mean, all the talk about Titanic, though, I remember what a big deal it was when it hit $1 billion.
Yeah.
And now, blockbusters are, considered like failures if they don't hit at least $1 billion worldwide or something like that. It's so weird how that scale is, because I remember back when, and there's a famous clip that was floating around where Mark Hamill was on Johnny Carson talking about how wildly successful Star Wars was, and it was like 6 months in and they'd made $165 million or something like that. And it's like, part of it's inflation and everything like that, but you sit there and you think about it, and it's like, I remember that 1989 Batman made, once when it broke $100 million, it was a huge deal.
Oh yeah.
Like, but Cameron's the one that kept kicking down the budget door, and he made, Terminator 2 for like $110 million, and like Titanic was $200 million. And did we ever find out what Avatar was made for or anything like that?
Like $250 million, something like that. I don't think it was $300 million, but it was close. Yeah.
So like it just becomes a scale of escalation. So when you talk about like you can't make this type of movie for less than $100 million, I think you can't make this type of movie for less than $100 million specifically because there are people who insist that they need $250 million to make it. And it's like,
but I think it's also like speaks to what those two demographics are looking for. Like, I mean, if we're just going to break it down to just, let's say, teenage boys and teenage girls, and that thing, like, I mean, obviously this is all, just like stereotypes, right? It probably has no sort of like basis in reality. I mean, Wonder Woman, clear example of how that sort of like throws all of what we're saying right out the window, And I mean, hey, I was a teenage boy who was, extremely in love with Titanic. I mean, more than anything else, right? So that's, but just, I mean, like just trying to, look at things in terms of like demographics in some sort of way, I don't know. It's weird. It's interesting.
It's so hard to predict, I guess. But something that isn't hard to predict is how to reach you online. So where can people find you online, Mike?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Mumbles3K, and you can also find me on my website, commentarytrackstars.com, doing a show called Commentary Trackstars. And you can find me on Trek.fm doing a show called Stage 9 with you.
That's right. We do Stage 9. We're talking about Quentin Tarantino's films because he's going to be a Star Trek creator Yay.
Yeah.
You can find me back here on this network co-hosting Aggressive Negotiations with Matthew Rushing. And you can find me co-hosting Words with Nerds with my pal Craig. So until next time, thanks for joining us on this journey, and we will catch you next week on Great Shot Kid.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.